Ondy Wilson is a UK-based, internationally acclaimed mindfulness trainer, writer and Buddhist teacher, a Dharma practitioner since 1980, and an FPMT Turing teacher since 2007. She makes teachings accessible to contemporary life. She has created a mindfulness-based mind training program that encapsulates Buddhist psychology in a secular framework. She has an upcoming book on the day-to-day practice of mindful awareness that is called Spiritual Rebellion: Why We Need to Practice Mindfulness with Attitude. There's one more workshop this month. It'll be next Tuesday at the same time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And next week, I think our clocks go forward. So instead of being 4, it will be 5 p.m. in the UK. Is that right? I think so. I always get, but we spring forward. So I think it'll be back to 5 o'clock for us. Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, good. Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining. Oh dear. Okay, well, we know the format now, those of us who have been attending before. So I'm going to start with just a few minutes of mindfulness, mindfulness of the breath, just to land safely in our nice space we've created for ourselves. And then I'll do some blah, 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 and have some discussion, maybe a meditation, depending on how the time goes. So there we go. So if we just take a few deep breaths and let the tensions go, leave the day, wherever it is, morning, noon, or night, and focus on our inner world. As we release tension, we release thoughts, which are, after all, the cause of our tension. Good or bad, negative or positive, they cause a dynamic within us. And it's only when we allow ourselves to come into this wonderful spaciousness of the mind, when we let go of thoughts and emotions as much as possible, to allow ourselves to breathe easy and nourish ourselves. Let's think of our motivation for attending the session. If there's anything in particular that's troubling us. After all, this is called Become Your Own Therapist. So if we identify our therapeutic need right now, the one that is most dominant is best. We can't do everything. And then put that out there in the hope that we'll get some answers. And if we don't, we can bring it to discussion. But motivation is to leave this session feeling nurtured, nourished, resilient, a little bit enlightened. And we can also take refuge if we're Buddhists, and even if we're not, we can take refuge in wisdom and great compassion. The qualities of our Buddha nature, our potential for enlightened mind. We're moving from head to heart. Opening ourselves up to anything that will help us defeat the delusions and the afflictive emotions we experience so regularly. Our weapons of mass ignorance destruction. And when you're ready or prepared, you can end your little meditation. Okay. Are we all awake? Half awake. Right. So, yes, these sessions have gone quickly, haven't they? We're on the penultimate session. And looking back at what I've delivered, in terms of self-esteem, I was looking at the first noble truths, so quite a Buddhist session tonight, which I hope, if you're not Buddhist, is transferable for you. You can ask questions anyway. So, the first noble truth being that when the Buddha became enlightened, he recognized and taught, it was his first teaching, the Four Noble Truths. And the first one was, there is suffering. Now, there you go. We've all come to become your own therapist because we're longing to destroy this suffering. Yeah. I'm suffering. I've recognized I'm suffering. I need help. Okay, so we take refuge. How do we destroy the suffering? But the first point is to actually acknowledge that whilst we are human, whilst we are suffering in kind of this body, which brings all kinds of problems like aging and sickness, while we're in this body, the suffering isn't going to cease. So I don't want you to think this is going to be a session where we're going to go, oh, no, suffering. We're all suffering. We're going to focus on that. But actually, sometimes I think we forget, we forget that life, there is suffering. There will always be some kind of suffering. One could say it's dissatisfaction. Suffering is in various forms, and dissatisfaction is the kind of guiding one. And I do know that from many years of teaching Buddhism, that the reason that often people will come to the sessions when there's a problem, as if there aren't always problems, yeah. And then, they'll live their little lives and they'll listen. It will be very supportive. Then they might meet somebody and fall in love or get the job, or suddenly they're okay and they're off. Yeah. And you don't see them again. Oh, well, that sorted out my problem. I don't need it anymore. Yeah. But actually, the teachings of Buddhism are that even if you get rid of one problem, it's actually going to create the causes for more problems. So one of the first things we need to do as Buddhists is really kind of, if you kind of agree with this statement, and even if you don't, I think we're living in a time where suffering is pretty obvious wherever we look, yeah? There's a lot of issues going on for people, and they don't have to be in the middle of a war to be experiencing them. But it's to really think about this first noble truth, which is the Buddha came to the conclusion, to be alive, to be in this form, is in itself suffering of some description or another. And our job, you could say, the job description of a human being who has got the intelligence and who is able to understand the Dharma, whatever form it comes into you, is to get enlightened, because until we're enlightened, it will remain and it will go with us, because we come with the causes for suffering. We come into the world with the causes of suffering. We come in with what is described as contaminated aggregates. That's another negative for you, isn't it? I'm full of fun this evening. So contaminated aggregates and karma, yeah? So if we're coming in with the premise that for countless lives we've been creating karma, and this is imprinted on our consciousness, what do we expect of our lives? Now, the only reason we don't have this job description is because nobody tells us, because we all are kind of without the Dharma, living an illusion that, oh, look at this lovely little baby that's born, make it so happy, yeah? And we know actually that from the moment a baby is born, well, most of them cry, they're naked, and they need a lot of attention in order to grow, into a healthy human being. Whoa, so many things need to come together, yeah? And then we become incredibly attached, because this is actually a great cause of happiness. And then they grow up at the very least and leave you, or they might get sick, they might die. We hear so many stories right now, and your life is ruined, or your life is affected very deeply by this. And you recognize that, oh my God, nothing stays the same. I've got this lovely baby, but it ain't going to stay that way. You know how it is with animals. At the moment we've got lambs, running across the field. Oh, look at the lovely little lambs. It's spring. Yeah. Well, those lambs are going to be slaughtered. Yeah. But we like to live the illusion, the lovely sight of springtime, the daffodils and the birds making nests and the lambs springing around. Well, those birds are actually all screaming out territorial rights, and they can't even eat without constantly looking to see if something's going to come down and have them. So I'm really getting to the point, I promise you, where this is not going to feel like doom and gloom. But I think we often ignore the fact that what do we expect? What do we expect? If we take these basic truths, life is suffering. I remember when I first heard it, of actually being relieved, because I thought it was just me getting it all wrong. So I think that's one of the great premises of discovering Buddhism, the Dharma, a spiritual teaching, is that you go, oh, it's not only me. It is suffering. Well, that's a relief, isn't it? Because you're not in it on your own. And you notice that you start to look around you and go, wow, yeah, this is going on over there. So you start to lose that self-centered approach. Yeah. So you are, that's the incredible thing about this, is that once you come into contact with understanding that this is the nature of our reality, it actually connects you to others. And in that moment, we actually start to relieve our suffering because we're thinking of others. Yeah. Now, Lama Zopa teaches very strongly about this, that, that the cause of our suffering is self-cherishing. We're so focused on ourselves. And if we can think of others, then that relieves the suffering. And I think it's very true when you think of taking therapy, you could say that those people that come to your Buddhist classes for a little while and then go when it's over, they're in therapy. They're definitely in therapy because they're looking for something that will help them understand what is going on for them right now. And we will go and have therapy if we feel there's something that needs to be resolved. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some of us have very disturbing childhoods. As we grow up, we're not getting nurtured and loved the way we feel we should be. So we need to resolve those issues. Or maybe because a relationship like a marriage has gone all wrong and we're suffering terribly from deceit or being abandoned or abuse or whatever it's brought, which we never thought it would. Yeah. So we go to therapy for that. And then when we've kind of resolved that, we go, that's better. I'll come away now. But what Buddhism says is that actually life should be therapy. Everything we encounter, if we encounter it with the right kind of mind, the kind of mind that goes, okay, I get it. It's not just because of this. It's not just because that happened to me when I was 5 years old. It's because I have come into the world with contaminated aggregates and I have karma and afflictive emotions on my consciousness. Boom. Doesn't mean to say we don't get those special therapies, but to come away and think that everything will be okay now is immediately the cause of more suffering. Because we expect, we have hope, we have desire that things will get better. Yeah. So there is this tendency to constantly be living for some future happiness. It will be all right when I move out of this house, or when I am better. And yes, these are all temporary. It is a relief if you find out you haven't got some horrible disease, or the horrible disease is cured. You've got another lease of life. But for what? That is really the message of Buddhism. It's if we go, oh, that's great, now I can go on holiday and do this and do that and have a good time. Yeah. Not recognizing that attitude in itself is the cause of future suffering, because it's desire, which brings us to the second noble truth, doesn't it? The cause of suffering is craving. So if we think of mindfulness practice, what we're doing with mindfulness practice is we're trying to be present. Because when we're present, when we lose the craving for the next thing, or we lose the anxiety about the past thing, which happened to us when we were 5, then actually that is when we are most awake and most without problems, when we are fully present. So that's where your mindfulness practice comes in, and that's a secular practice. So people who practice mindfulness will find that. But if we don't have the greater perspective that mindfulness is not just a de-stressing thing, it's actually a way of life in order to understand that any kind of craving is going to bring us suffering. So going back to the job description, really, of being a human being, we are back to the point that of accepting and deeply understanding the nature of samsara. The nature of samsara is to suffer. It is cyclic existence. We personally, the 5 aggregates I have labeled I, I'm only here for a while. Yeah? And then the subtle mind will leave at death and go on and be something else. So this temporary existence as a human is offering us incredible opportunities because we've got these brilliant brains and we can be rational and we can understand and start to destroy the ignorance which causes the contaminated aggregates to keep being reborn. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of, it's kind of heavy stuff. There's no getting away from it. But it is there to shatter the illusion that all the things that we think are how sweet, how nice, it's lovely, which we all do, including me. I was doing it, oh, first lambs, how lovely, it's spring. You know, we're kind of programmed in this way. And then, of course, to think, oh, yeah, they're going to grow up into boring old sheep if they're lucky. And then if they don't, they're going to get slaughtered. Yeah. Sorry, but, you know, it's like puppies and dogs and, you know, babies and grown-ups, you know, it's such a difference. And of course, we're all kind of programmed to think that these sweet young things have an innocence. Yeah. The fact is they've got contaminated aggregates, karma, and afflictive emotions on their consciousness. We were those sweet young things once. We looked like those sweet young things, but we had all that potential on our minds for doing this, which is fantastic, but also for creating a lot more suffering for ourselves. So if we have a look at that nature of suffering, we're talking about karma. You know, again, I always say this because it's quite a big statistic, is that 98% of what we experience is karma, according to Lama Zopa. Told me personally once. I'm sure he's told many, many people, but it's on there because I was, why isn't this happening and why? And I do this and it doesn't turn out. Yeah. 98% is karma, Ondy. You haven't created the karma for it. You haven't created the karma for it. It's not going to happen. And then you've got that craving mind that is trying to make things happen. So there's such a balance that we need to find to accept and take responsibility for our karma and purify our minds of delusions and afflictive emotions, which will then create the karma for more satisfaction. I avoid the word happiness, more satisfaction and less desire. Yeah, that's crucial. So if you can create a persona of yourself as of being more satisfied, more content, less craving, then actually there'll be less afflictive emotions, because with the craving comes the afflictive emotions. Because if we don't get what we want, then somebody's at fault. Certainly not me. It'll be somebody out there or something out there, or this government or this world or this kind of society or whatever we want to point our fingers at, and that's endless, but it'll be out there. So we don't think, well, this is my karma. This is my karma, to not be in the war, but to be affected by it. Yeah? To be affected by the suffering, to feel helpless, to feel shame, to feel, wow, could this happen to me? To try and feel empathy, even as a nice, thoughtful, kind, compassionate being. You struggle. If you're feeling, there's only so much you can feel compassion for. We do lots of Buddhist practices where we're sending light everywhere. But honestly, if you're worrying about Ukraine, can you think about Eritrea? It's hard. We can only take one group at a time to feel sorry for, to have compassion for, because it's vast. It's vast. And the Buddha said, how can I be happy when the whole world is burning? With delusions, of course, with delusions, burning up with delusions and craving. And so, of course, for him, because he had created the causes, he then sat down and became enlightened, so he could benefit all beings. Yeah. Now, for us, in our little worlds, we're kind of going, well, it's a nice day today and I can do the garden and the sun's shining, go for a lovely walk and feel content. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if our mind is also permeated with the fact that how incredibly fortunate we are and to take care of our karma, and if something goes wrong, not to point the finger, but go, this is my karma, then again, that enables us to be more present. Yeah, it takes away the craving. Okay, so you need some good news, really, don't you? But when I was looking at becoming your own therapist, and I was talking to somebody earlier, I thought, we really do live in an illusion, and it's very, what else can we do? Because we are not enlightened. Okay, we are not enlightened, so there's only so much we can do. We can do lovely practical steps, we can work for charity, we can take refugees in, whatever you are able to, and everybody's different. But the most important thing is what we do with our minds. Yeah, in all of that. So yes, do the practical things. It'll be very helpful. You will help others. It's a wonderful thing to engage your mind with helping others in a practical way. But the greatest generosity is giving, refuge. Yeah. So refuge to refugees is a practical thing. It's a wonderful generosity, but also you want to give refuge to yourself. So under the umbrella of become your own therapist, we're focusing on that, giving refuge to ourselves. If we give refuge to ourselves, then we won't forget that there is suffering. Okay, so that is the good news, and we've looked at that together. If we make sure that we take refuge, we understand what refuge is, that we have these inequalities, and we go there in our meditation, then we're constantly becoming a source of refuge for others, because it's not magical thinking, it's practical magic. You're creating the karma for that to happen. And we often don't get that because we're so wrapped up in our day-to-day lives. We sometimes forget that there is magic in knowing that life is suffering, that there is suffering, that knowing we are in the nature of suffering, that knowing we have afflictive emotions and contaminated aggregates and those delusions, there is practical magic in that because it's opening the door to change that. You know, you can't be in one room, literally, and be thinking about the other room and want to get there without opening the door. Yeah. And understanding that there is suffering is that door. So we already have all that resource for managing any issues we have. But what I'm saying is important, why I'm saying that the First Noble Truth is so important, is that when we're in that state of thinking, oh, why, you know, everything's gone wrong, this happens, that happens, I do this, and I'm a good person, I'm a a nice person, but it keeps happening to me, or whatever is going on. You know, you could have been the most wonderful husband or wife in the world. You could have been, you know, great in bed, great in the kitchen, great everywhere. Doesn't mean to say that your partner is going to stay with you and adore you. Just doesn't mean that. Do you see? It's karma. It is karma that will keep you together. And that's the mistake we make in thinking, I'm a good person, I'm nice, I've been this, I've done that, without going, well, I is an illusion, because I don't exist in the way I think I do. And also depends on karma. So we see, you know, the terrible things that happen to people, and you think, oh my God, those women, those children, it's horrendous. We don't want to see the suffering. It's so hard to take on. But in our meditation and our prayers, we are wanting people to be free from suffering by finding the way out, by managing to open that door. If the door's closed, you're just thinking about it. If we open the door, then we can turn our attention to others, see it everywhere, and generate a compassionate heart, which we all have. We all have incredibly compassionate hearts. And I think that's a strong attraction in any religion, is the compassion that we have for others. So I'm just going to try and bring this little prayer up, which many of you will know. There we go. Can you see it? Good. Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up. That's great. Okay, so many of you will be aware of this, but this is the dedication, which is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's favorite dedication, and it's something we use regularly in our Buddhist classes. It's a favorite of many people's, and it's from Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara. So I wonder if you want to say this with me in your quiet ways. You'll just be speaking it while I speak it, so we get a feel for it before we start some discussion. I'll say a few words about it afterwards. So this is from a Bodhisattva, and he's written this, and it's a place where we can go in our minds when we're just focused on our own suffering. It's that everybody's suffering. But if you think of the extent of this now, then your heart opens. So all those beings that are suffering are actually the causes for your great compassion. Interdependence. We totally need other people. So may all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit wrong, or ever feel ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak from sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay. So just to highlight, may all beings everywhere. If you're a being, there's some kind of stuff going on that you're dealing with, yeah? The suffering of body and mind, or just a suffering of body or all mind. There's something going on. There's some kind of dissatisfaction. And it is in the nature of us being beings. But because we are human beings, we have such merit through just being human, we can turn our attention outwards. And in turning our attention outwards, our suffering is immediately relieved by thinking of others. So in the darkest, desperate place, if we think of others, and we have endless choices to think of others, that relieves our suffering. We're not in this alone. We may die alone, but we're not in this alone. We are all going through the same thing and learning the same lessons. So I'm not going to go through all this, but just, there's endless reasons why people are suffering, basically. May no living creature suffer, commit wrong, or ever feel ill. Commit wrong. This is a form of suffering. So this is what we understand in Buddhism is the negative karma that has accumulated on our consciousness, like sediment, But what is the saying? No lotus, no mud, no lotus. Yeah, no mud, no lotus. It is through this very suffering nature that we are there and recognizing it, recognizing that, well, that's what life is, and we need to learn from it, and this is the way to learn, then there'll be the lotus. So how fortunate are we? And then I go to the bottom. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Well, that's the prayer of the Bodhisattva, and that's the vows of the Bodhisattva. How can I be happy when the whole world is burning? Yeah? So as long as there is suffering, I will be here to help in any way I can, recognizing that in any way that we can help to benefit others relieves our own suffering. That's the great, compassionate, altruistic heart of bodhicitta. Enlightenment mind. In helping others, it relieves my suffering. So endless gratitude to other beings who are helping us develop that mind. Okay, so I hope I gave you some positives there. Let's open this up and see if we've got any questions arising from that little talk. Do unmute yourselves anyway, and let's have a little bit of talk until we do some, or if we do meditation, we can just chat. Has nobody got anything to say? I've been terribly depressing. Or have I? Tell me, what's the effect on you? How do you feel? How do you feel after hearing about that First Noble Truth and the realities of it? Somebody tell me.
I just want to say thank you for the space today. Oh, sorry. There's someone else.
Sorry, no, I was looking at the wrong person, wondering why her lips weren't moving. Okay. Is it Nina?
Nina, yes.
Nina, lovely name. Okay, carry on.
What really resonated with me was people want to basically come and do the work when like the symptoms are already there, and then they stop once they feel like they got a solution to that one aspect. And the other one was the relief of knowing like, okay, it's not just me like feeling like this. Because for me, it was, I had gotten to a point just dealing with so much anxiety and that point in your life, you're like, what's the purpose? Like, I don't understand. Like, what is this all about? When you strip all the labels of being a worker or being a parent or being a spouse, and it's like, I don't understand, like, what's the bigger purpose here? And then I remember listening to Thich Nhat Hanh's book. It was an audiobook that he wrote, Fear. And just everything he described, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Like, I'm not just like feeling by myself on this. It's everywhere. And that was just like the turning point for me. It was empowering just to know like there's nothing wrong with me. And that really remotivated me to get back to the work and stay committed. And I love how you said mindfulness, I might misquote you, but like mindfulness isn't a practice, it's a lifestyle. And I was like, I love that because it's so true. It's every day. It just doesn't, you don't just wake up and say, okay, I'm just going to stretch, I'm good. And it's like every day you're being aware. So,
well, I think you said it better, because you encapsulated mindfulness isn't a practice, it's a lifestyle. Is that what you said? I didn't say that. I kind of meant that, but I don't think I used those words, and those words are great. That's exactly it. And that is kind of the problem, if you like. Well, I'm being critical here of some kind of modern mindfulness practice without the deeper meaning behind it, is that it becomes something for de-stressing, and then you can go out and get pissed, And it's not about that, which doesn't mean to say you can't have a drink or whatever, but it's this contrast between I'm doing my practice now, or I'm going to do my yoga, and then I can go out and have a good time, and that good time will feel better because I've done my yoga or my meditation. And that is missing the point completely, because in doing our mindfulness practice and doing any meditation, whether it's analytical or stabilizing meditation, it is in order to nourish us so that when we go out, we have an open heart. Really, we have an open heart. And then when we can enjoy ourselves, but it will be a deeper joy, and we would attract different energy to us. And I don't mean that to sound, a bit sort of hippie energy stuff, but it's to do with attracting, as I said before, if you take refuge in yourself, then you will attract good energy. It will come, or you will attract the beings that you need to meet in order to develop. because you're making prayers. You're making prayers to change, and you're opening your heart. So thank you very much, Naina. That was great. Anybody else got anything to say or ask at this point? Yes, Barbara.
Yes. Just thinking out loud here, some of the things you said about self-cherishing, and also I struggle with the concept of karma because, growing up in a Western culture, like a punishing Christian religion, like, karma, my first awareness of karma was, if somebody cut you off in traffic, that later that day, maybe a piano would fall from a third floor window on them. And it would be like this. It was this imminent justice.
Yes.
And so, but on a kind of a much softer version of that is if I see a homeless person, and rather than accept that suffering that I feel with them, that compassion, of being present there, it's sometimes easier. I'm ashamed to say this. Sometimes it's easier for me to sit back and do some self-cherishing for my own inner being and say, well, that's their karma. I don't have to intervene because it's their karma. Or the lamb on the countryside that is, headed for slaughter at some point, that I don't have to intervene and change anything about my life, that's their karma. So I kind of struggle with these background kind of thoughts that really are self-cherishing, that somebody is punished because they did me wrong and that's their karma, or I don't have to change anything because outside of me that's karma in place. So I really was happy to hear when you said when we see suffering, it's our, we have to do what we can, or you said it much better than I'm saying it, but that there is some sort of impetus for me to do something rather than just sit back and be passive. So I just wanted to share that I struggle with that.
That's great. And I think it's really important to bring this point up about karma, because it is used so randomly. What is their karma, Oh, well, that relieves me of a lot of problems. I don't have to think about them. Whereas what it's doing is offering us the opportunity to recognize we all have karma. Yeah. And it's a different approach. It's not there, but for the grace of God go I. I'm in God's grace, they're not. I'm sure there's other ways of understanding that from a Christian perspective, but just to draw the the analogy there is that when we see other people suffer, that they are enabling us. They are enabling us to develop great compassion and to open our hearts to them and to recognize that if it hasn't happened to you yet, it's definitely happened to you in the past lifetime, and it may well happen in the next. So it's a kind of taking time and just bringing it all together and going, we're all in this. We've all been subjected to war. We've all burned. We've all drowned. We've all, as Lama Zopa says, the number of bodies we've had as high as the highest mountain. I think he mentions Mount Kailash, but he would, but the highest mountain, all of our bodies. And it's really important. And it's a big mistake, I think, in Western society in particular, that doesn't understand what is meant by karma. We use it as, just as you said, what is their karma? Yeah. Oh my goodness, what have they done? I mean, you're talking about Mr. Putin now, you're thinking, whoa, look at the karma there. Yeah. And it's a tricky one because we've been dictators. We might be dictators. If we haven't got power, then we don't know, because power corrupts. Yeah. We don't know about the deluded mind. Bobby, is that okay? I'm just backing up.
Yeah, no, I just had something else to add on in terms of what Barbara said, which is if we don't act on the intersection that we have with somebody else's bad karma with compassion, then we have no chance for enlightenment, because it's through compassion for the other, especially the most disgusting other, like Putin, for example, that creates that bigger compassionate heart in us and moves us on down the line, so to speak.
Yes. And that what we're looking at here is what we would describe as the emptiness of it all. But, you know, actually, you know, that there is no Putin, there is no Bobby, there is no Ondy. It's all a completely interdependent way of seeing reality, that everything is kind of there for a reason. Yeah. And that the karma around us is our karma. If we can see it and we can feel bad about it, we've been there. We've got it on our consciousness because we have contaminated aggregates. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. How are we doing? Anybody else? Barbara, other Barbara, you wanted to say something earlier. Has it gone now? Is that you're all right now? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I just wanted to
Dave.
make a further comment on karma, and because karma is very complicated, but to make it very simple, you know, we are a product of our past karma. That's true. And also we can generate good karma through our actions. So, you know, through our prayers and through our compassion, we are developing good karma. So by ignoring, as Barbara was saying, we are not developing good karma. So by having compassion, as Bobby's saying, and we are developing our own good karma. So I think that's an important point.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's the summary really of what we've been saying about suffering. It is, you know, we don't want to ever turn our back on it, embrace it and feel it and use it to develop our own minds. That's the path. Yeah, that's the path. So we've got 5 minutes. Shall we do a little sort of mental meditation thinking before we finish, unless there's any outstanding questions? Just a few minutes, just take, sorry, is that, are we okay? Okay. Okay, so just sit with this. What we're sitting with is the main concept, which is there is suffering. Maybe just take the image of it opening the door in your heart. So it's not a negative. It's the recognition of reality. We're removing the dust from our eyes, seeing reality, accepting it and utilizing it for our own development. So just feel some light at your heart, wonderful lotus or Buddha, just beaming out all around your body and mind, filling you with light. And so we end with always the irony of Buddhism is that what sounds negative is actually incredibly positive on our journey to enlightenment. In fact, we're embracing suffering as something precious, mud that will lead to our flowering. for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain. Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you.